Subcommittee, I'd like to call the meeting to order, it being 5:30. Would the clerk please call the roll? Here.
Here. Here. 3 present.
Thank you. The purpose of this evening's meeting is to get a presentation from the administration regarding the bike lanes on Father Morissette Boulevard. Actually, this is reported that's in response to, I believe, 2 motions filed back in, I want to say April, by Mayor Elliott and by Councilor Mercier, asking the council to look into whether or not we can enhance, if you will, the bike lanes along Father Morissette, and we do have some recommendations from the administration. Before we get into the presentation, let me just recognize City Manager Murphy, who's here, along with Mayor Elliott, Councilor Mercier, Councilor Samaras, Councilor Belanger is here. Thank you all for being here this evening. At this point, if it's okay with my colleagues, I will turn it over to the administration, and I'm sure that we have probably some speakers from the public who would like to be heard this evening as well. And we did get some correspondences from UMass Lowell, both from their transportation department as well as from their planning department. They're looking to work in partnership with the city as we move forward to enhance the bike lanes along not only Father Morissette but within the city. So I can get to that in a little bit, but at this point, with no objection, I'll turn it over to Diane Tradd, the Assistant City Manager, Director of Planning and Development, to walk us through the presentation. Thank you.
It is 10 minutes long, but it's very important because it will make you aware of the complexities of the law, how it protects bicyclists and motorists, and I think everyone should just take the time and see that, because you'll understand a lot more about bike lanes after
You did reference the presentation in the report. Yes, thank you.
The video is called Shifting Gears. It was produced by the Boston Police Department. Their target audience was other police departments, but we've all found it to be very informative from both the motorists' point of view as well as the bicyclists. And a lot of the bike advocates that we've worked with in the past year have seen this already. And I hope the volume goes up loud.
And thank you, Lisa DeMeo, our city engineer, for being here as well.
I apologize for the volume. That appears to be up as loud as I can get it.
Hello, I'm Captain Jack Danilecki of the Boston Police Department. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts encourages people to ride bicycles for transportation.
Thank you very much.
To reduce traffic congestion and pollution, to save money, and to stay healthy. As more and more people ride bikes in our cities and towns, motorists and cyclists must learn to share the road. Lives are endangered when people ride or drive recklessly, speed, or simply do not pay attention. This video will help you identify dangerous behavior and enforce Massachusetts traffic laws preventing injury and saving lives. With the increased cycling in Massachusetts, this type of enforcement is more important than ever. In Massachusetts, we care about the safety of everyone on the road. This project is a collaboration between public safety and the advocates at Mass Bike.
I'm David Watson, Executive Director of Mass Bike, the Massachusetts Bicycle Coalition. We're really pleased to work with our partners in public safety to make the roads safer for everyone.
Bicyclists' right to the road. Chapter 85, Section 11B. Under state law, bicyclists may ride on almost all roads and bridges. The only exceptions are limited access or express highways where signs prohibiting bicycles have been posted. Bicycles may use the full lane and do not have to stay to the right or in a bike lane at all times. Bicyclists often move out into the travel lane to avoid debris, bad pavement, car doors, and other dangers, to make a left turn or to make themselves more visible to drivers. Bicyclists may ride to the right of traffic alongside the curb or parked cars, but they are not required to. Many cyclists do this rather than mix with traffic, despite the hazards of riding too far to the right. Bicyclists may ride two abreast. When faster traffic needs to pass, cyclists should move into the single file and stay to the right to assist the passing vehicles. but only when it is safe for the bicyclist to do so. Bicyclists should not endanger themselves to allow impatient motorists to pass. State law prohibits biking on sidewalks in business districts,
I'm just driving through. Yeah, but you can hurt somebody.
and local laws can further limit or even prohibit bicycling on sidewalks. This means bicyclists often have to ride on the street with cars. Note that not every city or town has officially designated business districts, so the state law may not apply in your community. During Chapter 90, Section 14. Let's talk about the most dangerous situations between motorists and bikes. During is at the top of the list.
Oh, hey, what are you
almost
doing?
made me crash, sir.
Hey.
You're supposed to at least look at
Hey,
where
I
you're going.
didn't see you.
How do you not see me?
And you almost made me crash. Good thing there weren't any cars in the lane. I don't know what you were doing.
Before opening a car door, drivers and passengers have an obligation to check for traffic coming from behind, especially bikes. Failure to do this can cause a crash or force a bicyclist to swerve into traffic, either of which is subject to a $100 fine. This can happen on either side of a vehicle, and even if the bicyclist doesn't crash, if the door interferes with their movement, it is a violation.
And here's your violation.
Passing, Chapter 90, Section 14. Cyclists often report that motorists pass them unsafely. Drivers are obligated to pass bicyclists at a safe distance and reasonable speed. Some drivers don't realize they are passing unsafely and that the bicyclists need space to maneuver. Chapter 89, Section 2. If it is not possible to pass a bicyclist safely in the same lane, a driver must use an adjacent lane or wait for a safe opportunity to pass. A few seconds of patience can prevent a serious crash. Yield on right turns. Chapter 90, Section 14. Turning vehicles, especially buses and trucks, are particularly hazardous to bicyclists. Many motorists don't realize they are required to look for bicyclists before turning. One of the most common crashes is the right hook. It is a violation for a driver to pass a bicyclist and then turn right or to pull to the curb before they are safely clear of the cyclist. Drivers must look behind and to the right before every right turn or risk hitting a cyclist. Remember that bicyclists are allowed to ride to the right of other traffic. So even drivers stopped and waiting to turn right must look for bicyclists who may be moving up alongside them before turning. Yield on left turns. Chapter 90, Section 14. Another common crash is the left cross. Drivers must look carefully for oncoming bicyclists before turning left. Because bicyclists may ride to the right of other traffic, they may be difficult to see, but it is the driver's responsibility. Left turning bicyclists must also yield to oncoming traffic. Parking in bike lanes. Local ordinances. Bicyclists are also at risk when drivers park or stand in bike lanes. Drivers who park or stand in a bike lane or marked shared lane endanger bicyclists by forcing them to merge into faster moving traffic. Following rules of the road, Chapter 85, Section 11B. So far, we have covered motorist responsibilities toward bicyclists and bicyclist rights on the road. So what about bicyclist responsibilities? Bicyclists are required to follow the rules of the road, including stopping at red lights and stop signs. Note that not all traffic signals can detect bicycles, and some intersections are very challenging for bicyclists' safety under any circumstances. Enforcement should focus on those who are endangering themselves or others. Bicyclists are subject to all the same rules of the road as motorists, but will be cited under Chapter 85, Section 11B. Hand signals, Chapter 85, Section 11B. Cyclists should use hand signals to indicate turning or stopping. But it's okay not to signal when both hands are needed on the handlebars to control the bike. Bicyclists yield to pedestrians. Chapter 85, Section 11B. Just like motorists, bicyclists have to yield to pedestrians. This means always yielding at crosswalks. Where biking on the sidewalk is permitted, cyclists must ride slowly and announce their presence to pedestrians, such as with a bell or verbal warning. Lights at night, Chapter 85, Section 11B. At night, the law requires bicyclists to have a white headlight and red rear reflector or light. Additional lights or reflectors or reflective clothing are even better, and you can see why. Lights at night might help cyclists see where they are going, but more importantly, lights make cyclists more visible to others on the road. Wrong way bicycling, Chapter 85, Section 11B. As children, many people were taught that riding against traffic is safer because it allows you to see oncoming vehicles. Crash statistics tell us this isn't true, and crashes occur because drivers aren't looking for cyclists riding toward them. And cyclists riding the wrong way may not be able to see traffic signals, signs, or hazards. Bicyclists should ride in the same direction as other traffic, not against it, unless they're in a bike lane specifically intended for riding in the opposite direction of traffic. Crash investigation. Despite our best efforts to promote road safety, sometimes crashes occur between bicyclists and motorists. Keep in mind that bicyclists are far more vulnerable than drivers and are much more likely to be injured or in shock following an even relatively minor crash. When taking a bicyclist statement, remember that he or she may be suffering from shock and short-term memory loss. Even if the cyclist seems fine, you should follow up in a few days. If the cyclist is incapacitated, visit them in the emergency room or hospital to get their statement. Let's review major points we've covered. Bicyclists have full rights to use the road. Bicyclists may ride to the right of other traffic. Bicyclists can ride two abreast. Bicycling on sidewalks is prohibited in designated business districts. Drivers must pass bicyclists at a safe distance in reasonable speed, even if that means changing lanes or waiting. Drivers must yield to bicyclists when turning right or left. Bicyclists should follow the rules of the road. Bicyclists should use hand signals when it's safe to do so. Bicyclists must yield to pedestrians. Bicyclists must use lights at night. Bicyclists should ride in the same direction as other traffic. After a crash, be sure to follow up with the bicyclist to get their statement.
It's no accident when drivers and bicyclists get to where they're going safely. The public count on us to keep the road safe and to protect those who are at great risk. Thanks for watching. Be safe out there.
Thank you for taking the time to watch that. I know when I watched it, some things jumped out at me, and I thought, oh boy, I don't know if I've been doing that right. So I think education is a big piece of this whole movement towards more bike
Right.
lanes.
And again, in the report that you gave the council back in October, you mentioned this actual video and that we
Yes.
should have an opportunity to see it, so it was well worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you. The next slide is just a map of the area that we're talking about from Arcand up to Pawtucket Street. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we got to this point, why the bike lanes were installed. The bike lanes were installed in 2013 as part of the city initiative to provide more infrastructure for bicyclists. This initiative is a key component of the city's master plan and is also part of the city's goal to adopt a complete streets policy. Bike lanes provide near-term benefits for those residents who choose alternative modes of transportation, while also providing the long-term benefit of achieving greater mobility, economic vitality, and environmental health. The bike lane is also part of UMass Lowell's long-term plan to increase mobility for its students and to decrease the need for surface parking lots. The UMass Lowell strategic plan cites that the Father Morissette bike lanes provide a direct connection from the Ayotte parking garage and the Songus Arena and UMass Lowell's University Crossing Building and the East Campus. The bike lane provides a crucial link to these areas of the UMass Lowell campus and provides access to student parking at the Ayotte garage. As of the academic year 2014-15, all freshman and sophomore commuters on the North Campus must park at the Ayotte garage. The Father Morissette bike lanes provide a connection to the future improvements to Pawtucket Street. I think a bike-friendly city contributes to the city manager's College Town initiative. Most college communities do have bike lanes, and bikes are a mode of transportation for many students. Presently, the city and UMass Lowell are working together on a bike share initiative. And the City of Lowell Master Plan Sustainable Lowell 2025 articulates its goals for providing alternative transportation modes in the Mobility and Access chapter of the master plan. Goal number 1, develop, implement, and identify a citywide bicycle plan. Goal number 3, encourage employers, institutions, and commercial property owners to provide facilities that support bicycle commuting. Goal number 4, through project review and land use regulations, encourage site designs that support walkable neighborhoods and bicycle pedestrian accessibility.
Eric Eby, my predecessor in this position, had spoken quite a bit with the Lowell Police Department, people at the university, as well as the various bike advocacy groups, and came up with several different alternatives based on the national design standards for bike lanes. And one of the options, later in the presentation, we'll show you several different locations. Each location will go through all of these options, so they're little pictures, but this is what they're going to be representing. Alternative 1 is to remove the outer white line. At this point in time, between the bike lane and the travel lane, there are 2 white lines. So alternative 1 is to remove the one line closer to the travel lane. That will widen the travel lane just a bit, but the bike lane width will stay just as it is right now. In addition to removing that one line, we're recommending the option of adding in within the lane either the words bike only or the symbol for the bike and the word only, in addition to removing the one white line. Yep. That's talking about the words bike only on that one. Alternate 2 would be to remove that white line and replace it with some hatching. It would be a smaller area than what's shown, what's out there right now. So it would be to replace it with some hatching, and the hatched space would be between the bike lane and the travel lane. And that option is around $15,000. The previous one, I don't know that I mentioned, would be around $7,500. Alternative 3 would be to paint the entire bike lane with standard green paint. Green is the color that's been identified for bike lanes across the country, so that if you see a bike lane here, it's green. You see a bike lane in Nevada, it's green. That's the color that's been identified. If we were to use standard paint, it would have to be redone every year. That would be about $30,000 a year. The thermoplastic paint costs 10 times as much, does not last 10 times as long, would be around $300,000 to paint probably every 5 years. There we go. Alternative 4 is similar to Alternative 3, but instead of painting the entire lane, would be to just paint the first 30 feet as you go through each intersection, and the bike lane is now visible on the other side of the intersection. That first 30 feet would be painted on that side. And that one, again, I think would vary depending on the type of paint we used, but we're estimating right now $15,000. So this shows inbound at Aiken Street. The top picture is the existing condition, and then option 1, option 2, option 3, and option 4. That scenario follows through with all the other pictures. So option 1 shows you this line here is removed on this one, and then down here on option 4, is just the first 30 feet being painted. It's a foresight into what our recommendation is going to be option 1 and option 4. So that's what I'll be talking about through most of this. But you can see, here's the hatching, and this one is the painting the whole way down. This is a different intersection, but the same thing. There's the double line, here's removing it, and then down here is the first few feet. And this one is inbound at Cabot Street with the same series of scenarios. Outbound at Cabot, outbound at Suffolk, and that's the last. But we're recommending that alternative 1 and alternative 4 combined be the way to go. That encompasses the Lowell Police Department's preferred way to go. They like option 1 of removing the double white line. And then to add to that, we liked the green, to us makes a difference. So the combined enforcement, which citywide, but combined enforcement with options 1 and 4 is what we're recommending.
And the estimated cost of 1 and 4 is about,
It would be about $20,000 for all 3 things. So it would be the green boxes, removal of the outer line, and also the words bike only or the symbol bike and only spaced throughout the lane so that people are reminded constantly that it is a bike lane.
Okay.
We're trying to make this as safe as possible.
okay. Thank you. I'll open it up to the committee for questions at this point. Council Martin? Council Leahy?
I guess I like the recommendation, and I mean, I guess seeing it on the big screen, it makes sense. The only thing after we remove the first white line is how many times a year do you have to paint the green over? Every year?
Depends on the kind of paint we use. If we use the thermoplastic paint, I think they say 3 to 5 years.
But that's not in the 10,000 though, right? It'd be more than that.
We're gonna look, we haven't looked at that, the 30 feet. We looked at the 20 feet, but it will be a little bit more. But we're still thinking we might be able to get it for around 20,000 for all of the items. If we do some of the work in-house, some of the bike lane stencils, that kind of thing.
Okay. All right, and I suppose that would make it easier for everybody. Honestly, I know a few people didn't like it first when it was painted. I mean, I don't really see the problem. If you see a white line, you're not supposed to cross it. I mean, that's the rules of the road, so. But it does look a little less confusing, I guess, when you just see the one line in alternative 1, so. I kind of hate to have to spend money on this, but that's my only comment.
Thank you, Council Leahy. Council Martin?
Thank you. I had, I guess I had two points. One is, I guess Jeff Speck had talked about this in his original plan that he presented a few years ago, and he was back this year, spoke at the Lowell Plan breakfast, and his comment there was that we did it wrong. So is there anybody follow up with him to see why he thinks it was wrong, or what?
We did discuss it when we walked around the city, and we did it wrong because we did it in pieces that do not connect, which we knew that was a problem going into this, but we had to start somewhere. If we had put a bike lane on Arcan Drive, we would have had to remove a whole lane of parking, and no one was ready to take that leap. So this was really just the beginning, and we do need to look at this in a comprehensive manner and figure out the next steps, which going forward with the recommendations of this committee, we can do that.
Okay, so he didn't necessarily criticize Father Morissette, just that it didn't connect up
He
anywhere?
understands why we did it here to start, and that is going
Okay.
to increase over time, the
Okay.
amount of bike lanes.
So in my other point was in the video, which did have some good information in it, is that bicyclists already have sort of equal or preferential rights under the law,
Yep.
even without the existing lanes. Right? It really didn't talk much about bike lanes in the video, but so is the difference then by imposing the lane, that's an exclusive, no traffic can go in the lane, right?
Right.
So I didn't even know that at first, because a lot of places that we have in the city, we call shared lanes or share, right? So in some places, it's permissible to share the lane with the bike, and then other places, it's exclusive to the bike, right?
A bike lane itself is just for the bikes. A sharrow is basically the law, which is just the bikes and cars ride together. A bike can ride everywhere.
So that's really, the sharrow symbols are really just to raise awareness?
Yes.
That there's gonna be bicycles on the road. So, so that's, I guess, illuminating. I do start to see more bicyclists on our roads. So I think these efforts to sort of increase awareness to people in traffic, to be aware of bicycles is a good thing. I think the vast majority of the people I see on bikes, I shouldn't say vast, but a majority anyway, in my experience, have no idea about any of these rules.
Right.
You see bikes on sidewalks, you see them going the wrong way in traffic, riding down the middle of the road. So that, I think, is frustrating to people and motorists, and maybe that'll change over time. I'd say more recently I've noticed, students or others, that do make an effort to just comply with the law, yield and, blend in with traffic and do what they're supposed to do. And hopefully that'll increase over time. I think, as we're trying to accommodate the university, I think we're going to see more and more of that. So I think, at least in the areas where we anticipate there's going to be a lot of students, I don't see the issue of having things that don't necessarily connect up. I agree that we're going to have to do it piecemeal as funding's available, and things like that. I do agree with the recommendations. I was talking to the manager before the meeting, and we were thinking about one of them, discussing one of them, and I said, geez, that might not be bad if you could combine it with the other one.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's exactly what you recommend. So you won me over for this. So, I just think it's a reality. We're going to start to see more and more of this. I think we want people to be safe. We certainly want motorists to recognize and be educated about what they're supposed to do. I think we need a bigger effort at the bicyclists, at least, what I've seen in the downtown, which might not be true everywhere. It is a lot on sidewalks, and then partly they're on sidewalks because they don't feel safe in the traffic too. So, so we have some work to do, I think, on this issue. But I think as efforts like this that raise awareness can only help. So I appreciate the work on this.
I think that to have a successful bike lane system, or just to have bikes on your roads, it's good engineering, good education, and enforcement. And all three of those are necessary. And the education piece is as much for the bicyclists as it is for the motorists. I know when I watched this movie, the first thing I thought of was when you're on Father Morissette and you're turning on Suffolk Street, and I've gotten confused there, but this clearly points out, you stop, you look to make sure there's no bikes, and then you take your right-hand turn. You don't cut off the bike lane and head down Suffolk Street.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of education.
I think as we see more use of the parking on Father Morissette,
Yes.
that will help, right? At the beginning, it was just a whole new set of lines and no sort of physical barriers or any rhyme. Didn't appear to be much rhyme or reason to that. So, so I think it's a learning process we're going through here, but I think these recommendations will help.
Thank you. Councilor Leahy?
I just wanted to ask, is there any grant money that we've applied for education or to do the striping? The painting?
Once we get your recommendation, we can go forward with that, and we can look into grant opportunities. We do have about $8,000 left from when these bike lanes were installed to put towards this. But as far as educating the public, we can look into some grant possibilities. This video was put on the city website and also LTC by Eric Eby several months ago, so it's out there. But it probably should be in the schools and,
Yeah. And any shared cost with the university, or?
That's something else to look into.
Okay, because I agree with what Councilor Martin said. The biggest problem right now is when you're down in the downtown area, you have people coming the wrong way at you. You have people on the sidewalks, and, you know, to put $20,000 into painting the road, I'm not so sure, you know, the money would be better spent educating, but, so I'm kind of having a hard time on if this is going to come out of local funds or,
Well, I'd like to work with our police department and see what we can do, just in-house to educate schools, neighborhood groups, you know. Seeing this, I think, would make people think when they're driving on Father Morissette or anywhere else there's a bike lane, or if you're a cyclist, what you should be doing.
yeah.
So if maybe we can do it without spending money, and then we can look for grant opportunities as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. As I stated earlier, UMass Lowell is very much interested in these discussions. Unfortunately, Paul Marion and/or Adam Biggie couldn't be here, but they did call to support and really preserve what's there, but enhance it, as we're talking about with this recommendation. So I think Council Leahy's point about having the administration get back in touch with the university makes some sense. Councilor Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a great idea to have this film go into the different neighborhood groups so they could show the different respective neighborhoods. This was a very informative piece of filming. In fact, when you have a car, you have to be mindful of your surroundings, whether it be a bicycle. You can go down a narrow street and someone can open a car door, and me driving a car, I could take that door right off in my car. So it's very dangerous when you're on a bicycle. I made a motion not to try to do away with that area. I know Father Morissette Boulevard was a very controversial area. I just wanted to direct attention to the fact that it's an important area of the city where UMass Lowell is right there and by there, and the dorms, and many students do ride the bicycles. I would never want to take that right away from people. I may not ride a bike, but I did as a kid. I remember when I had to go to the police department and get a plate for it. It was like a plate, like a oblong, but rectangular to the tall part. I still have my bicycle plate. It was green with white lettering. I'll never forget it. I did enjoy riding a bicycle. I think there are people today in society that love to save money, and they do that, and they love to save gas and be energy conscious with the environment. And so they do travel by bicycle, and I applaud them. That is wonderful. But I focused my attention with that motion to the fact that that was a very, very dangerous, confusing area. You have one section of the roadway designated for cars to park on that side, and then you have another area, a side of it designated for bicycles, and it was the width of a Sherman tank. That, to me, was unacceptable. I say that what the police are recommended, option 1 is a good one. I'm not necessarily in favor, which I wish we had the money, because it would be a good idea, but we don't have the money to paint it all green. That's a good thing if everything was perfect, but we don't have the money. So I'm not saying that I would want that, but this is a good start, and I saw that long ago where we had the presentation in PowerPoint in paper, and I saw that, and I said, oh, here are the options. There's some good ideas here. So it's good that you're following through on it, because we want to make the roadways understandable for people and safe, and the way that it is now is not safe, and that's all the point I was getting at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mercier. Councilor Belanger?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank Deputy Director Diane Trad for that great educational video. I learned a few things myself, I might add. I didn't know the cyclists had, that many rights that they do have. They're pretty much a small automobile on the road that you have to be very cognizant to. So that was a great learning lesson. That's one thing we have to get awareness is definitely a priority. But seeing the recommendations, I do think some enhancements are needed. I understand money is short. Councilor Mercier makes a good point. But however, the university has a stake in this as well. You know, there's grants available, there's city money. So if we can subsidize the costs, I am all for some enhancements. And this is only coming from me, Mr. Chairman, that I would support alternatives 1 and 4, such as the police department recommends. I think it's enough. I'd like to paint the whole thing green, but at $300,000, that's obviously not a reality. So if they're going to be there, which I think they are, we need enhancements, okay? So I think that would be a good start, and I think we can get it subsidized. I'm willing to bet, I can't speak for the university, but I think they'd be willing to chip in on this as well. So that's what I have to say there, but what I'd like to know, Mr. Chairman, through you to Diane Trad, what's our initial investment in this again? Not to mention, we may end up spending another 20, almost 20. What are we into this up till this point, may I ask?
I believe it was about 40,000.
Okay. So even if we pay roughly half, we'll be into this thing about $50,000. And you know what? It's great. We're expected to be open-minded on this council and proactive on cycling. We do want cycling to ramp up. But to this point, we have not seen what we wanted to see. I can tell you firsthand that there's more bikes on sidewalks downtown than there is in those bike lanes. And I think a few of my colleagues spoke of that as well. I'm not saying, no, I want to enhance what's there to hopefully ramp up usage, okay? So if it makes it more friendly and more safe, but in order to achieve that, then I'm all for it. But to this point, I'm not overly happy of the usage that's gone on up to this point. I hope it gets better. I think it can get better, but it may be an additional cost to get to that point, and hopefully it's well under that 20,000 mark, and we can get it done. So I do support, again, Mr. Chairman, those alternatives, and I think we can get it subsidized, and hopefully activity ramps up there, because I'm only one vote here, but one opinion, I should say, but I'm not overly pleased, again, to the usage to this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Belanger. Council Samaras.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Milonazo, for bringing up this issue tonight. I want to thank the Director of Planning and Development for this presentation, because it was well organized and actually gave us a lot of information to work with. I think this is an issue that's been discussed at great lengths, but I see a potential for actually dealing with this. I would ask, through the chairman, to Diane Trad, is it possible to get a timeline of planning as to the steps that should be taken to look into? I mean, winter's here, and we'll have less driving, but we have of bicycles, but we have to deal with this issue. So I'd like to see an idea of how we can, what type of training should take place, or what type of, information should get out to the schools, what type of information should get out to the citizens of the city, and how we can best handle that. And sort of a timeline of events that will help us address this issue. And it's something that you could come back and forth to this city council to receive the type of help that you would need. And I think by having Mr. Milonazo's subgroup meet on this at various times, that information will get out to the public, and I think it's important at this point. So that would help. Thank you.
I think during, the winter months when we can't do any construction, we can focus on the education piece with the schools, with the neighborhood groups, and really make an effort with the police to get this out there, because I do think education is a huge piece of this. And in the meantime, we can also start looking for grants, talk to the university about funding, and work towards getting that money so that in the late spring, we can go ahead and get this done this year.
Thank you. Before I entertain a motion from the subcommittee, does anyone from the public want to address the subcommittee on the issue? Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
My name is Charles Arnold. I live on Prescott Street in Lowell 58. And I've heard some great comments here from the council tonight. There's a couple I'd like to address personally, like Councilor Martin, Councilor Belanger, you spoke of the problem of enforcement and the cyclist behavior, especially in the downtown. And that certainly is an issue. And as a cyclist, one of the most frustrating things I see is when I'm either riding my bike or driving a car and I have someone blow through me blow by me at a red light, for instance, and it kind of deflects from any message we're trying to get out about the positivity of cycling. But I would like to say, so enforcement is got to be part of this, I think. But enforcement has got to go hand in hand with education and with infrastructure. And to illustrate this, something happened to me recently. I was walking on Prescott, where I live, and a cyclist he swept by me and almost hit me. And I yelled at him, and he stopped. And I thought, oh, here we go. Because that's happened to us a lot in the city. And he, instead of yelling at me, he turned around and he apologized. And he immediately got out in the street. And I kind of felt guilty because I thought, I've just sent this guy who may know nothing about riding in traffic out into the street. And I've ridden bikes for years in Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, and now Lowell. So I'm fairly experienced at it. But what I'm getting at is it's not enough to just enforce the rules. We need the infrastructure out there to make people feel safe riding in the streets. I'd like to add to that, I hope that the city, as we work on this, is casting a wide net, getting the best advice possible. For instance, in Cambridge and Somerville and Boston, there's miles of green-painted bike lanes. I don't know exactly how they're doing it. I mean, obviously their budget is larger than Lowell's. But that's why I wonder about, the paint really, is it that expensive? I don't have any personal opinion as to the different options. Clearly, I think something needs to be done because every cyclist I've spoken to has at one point or another either followed a car in the bike lane on Father Morissette or been followed by a car. So the current configuration is a little bit confusing at the very least to drivers. I would like to question though, in option 1, removing the outer lane, the outer white line, my only issue with that is that makes the car travel lane wider, and doesn't experience show that drivers tend to ignore speed limit signs and they tend to drive based on the conditions of the road. With a wider lane, are we not inviting faster traffic, and maybe can that white line stay in other words? So that's something I'd like you to think about. And anyway, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wish to? Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
Sure, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Bryce Hoffman. I live at 27 Jackson Street. The only issue I wanted to raise as a cyclist who's used the Father Morissette lanes on multiple occasions is I would love to see something done about the outbound lane where it crosses over at an intersection rather abruptly. Forcing cyclists to shoot diagonally across an intersection is dangerous, and I would love to see that be part of a solution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Yes, sir. Good evening.
Thanks. I'm Chris Hayes. I live at 100 Mass Mills Drive, apartment 304. I want to thank the subcommittee for discussing this very important issue. I speak as a downtown resident who mainly walks, but also has found a bicycle to give a little bit additional radius to where I can go, and also as a transportation planner. And I wanted to say that I also supported keeping the outer buffer line, mostly for what Charles suggested, is that studies show that the wider a lane is, the faster the traffic goes, and traffic could stand to continue to be calmed on Father Morissette. I also wonder what experience, or rather I've seen the experience in other cities that even with green bike lanes that are very clearly marked, cars still go in there because it's more convenient for cars and if a cyclist isn't in there. So that's why I feel like the enforcement and education issue is at least as, if not more important than the infrastructure issue. The other thing I wanted to support, and I'm glad to hear that Ms. Trad really discussed this, was following through on that first goal of the mobility and access chapter of the plan, of the master plan, to put together a citywide bicycle plan. And I really support doing that. I know city staff has a lot of things to do, so I understand how it can take a while. But build upon the master plan, build upon the 2009 city building workshops, put together a plan that might include bicycle parking and signage, origins and destinations, and the routes cyclists currently use or that they wish to use. So it would have to be a little bit of a public process to put together this plan. But begin to understand the areas of key cyclist, pedestrian conflict, cyclist, vehicle conflict, and do alternative analysis for those key corridors to kind of really put together a prioritized list. I'd really support that. I'd love to see like cost estimates for those things to know exactly how much it would cost to build that infrastructure. And also in that plan, as you guys have discussed, I really support including in that plan outreach, which includes safety education, maps. I know that schools are a great step, but I also know that a lot of the folks who ride bicycles don't speak English as a first language, never attended school in the United States, and I think those folks are very important to reach as well. And also perhaps a plan for collecting data, doing cycling counts. So I know that we can kind of get an idea we see, but it would be lovely to also have some real data to see if these lanes are making an impact, because if it goes from 2 to 4, it still seems like no bikes, but that was actually doubling the bikes. So that's all. Thank you for hearing me very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wish to speak before the subcommittee? Mayor Elliott?
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad to see Father Morissette will be addressed, or there's a compromise, or the configuration will be a little bit more clear. I think that was clearly a concern, certainly from the cyclist perspective, or maybe not, but certainly from the drivers in the city, which is one of the reasons why I did bring it up. And at the council meeting, we had many people come down, and there seems to be a trend on more cyclists that will be using those lanes in the city. And I mean, no one's against cyclists in the city. Clearly, there are some advantages, and if you look at some of the cities of Boston and Cambridge, Somerville, there is that trend. The concern is, I think, and has been discussed by several individuals in here, and that is to let people in the city know what the rules are, and that cyclists do have rights, but they also have responsibilities as well. My major concern, just as a resident of the city, driving in the city day in and day out, are these shared arrows, as I just learned. Some of them are worn out, and I don't think people realize, that the rights that the cyclists do have, that they do have, the ability to drive down the road. I get nervous about it, I have to admit. Just as a driver, I'm afraid that I'm going to hit somebody if I'm not on the alert for them. But that's something that I need to adjust to. So is there a plan for some of the gateways coming into the city to, I guess, restripe or to repaint those signs on the street, the sharrows?
Well, like you said, that is the law, that a bike can ride with cars. So
Right.
we did that to kind of roll out the whole bike lane issue. I don't know that we have the funds to repaint them, or that we need to. I think we might be better off putting the funds and the time into educating everybody about the rules of the road.
I dare to say, if you ask, I don't know, survey the people in the city, and if they realize that bikes can drive right down the middle of the street, in tandem in some cases, they will know. I did not know that. I think we all were educated here tonight. So if we are getting educated here in the council, people at home, average drivers, I don't think they know that. So I think that's something that we really do need to address, has been stated by folks that drive. And I do agree. People are driving on the sidewalks because they're afraid of the fact that people don't know the rights that they have on the street, hence bike lanes. I mean, if you look at the number of cycling accidents in Boston, it's one of the highest in the country, I believe. So even in a city like Boston that is more biker friendly, if you will, or apparently not, people just have not adapted to the notion that there's going to be bikes in the street. They're not going to be on the side. They may be driving down the middle. They may be in the bike lanes, and that's I think that's an obstacle, or that's an effort that we really have to put our either finances or our efforts behind. So appreciate this information. This is helpful, and getting that information out to drivers to be more conscious and careful, especially in the nicer weather, certainly will be worthy of our efforts.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. Councilor Mercia?
Mr. Chairman, this is the Transportation Subcommittee. Are we just supposed to stick to the Father Morissette? We can't talk about another issue regarding transportation and safety of the public?
It was advertised as the Father Morissette bike lane, so I mean, again, I would defer to the clerk, but why don't we take some action on this, and then if we have a minute, we can certainly do that, but what's the wish of the subcommittee at this point?
I'd move to adopt the recommendation of the administration.
Motion by Council Martin to adopt the recommendation of the administration. Is there a second?
I was going to disagree, so should I state my reasons now? Or?
No, I'll second it for
No,
discussion.
okay.
Council Leahy?
I just, after listening to everybody's input here, and I don't even know where the money's coming from yet, but, putting some green down, recommendation 4 is the only one I'm really comfortable with. I feel like the lines are fine. If you know the rules of the road, you shouldn't be crossing the white line. So I don't see why there's any reason to spend the $7,000 to get rid of it. It even says in the report that it might scar it and still leave confusion. So I'd rather see the money go into education and maybe some green paint. So I like recommendation 4, but so that's where I am with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Recommendation 1 and 4, as I understand it from the presentation, did come from the police department. Is that correct?
Number 1 was from the police.
Number 1 was from the
Yes.
police department, okay.
But can I just
Yes,
ask?
yes,
It
Councilor
says
Blake.
in the report, though, that why would they recommend number 1 if they said there's still going to be confusion? I mean, I know you're not the police department, but that sounds contradictory to me, to say, I suggest 1, but there's still going to be confusion. Well, I wouldn't
Well,
suggest it.
maybe they
so-
realize that the education piece is missing as well.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you for those comments. We have a motion. It's been seconded. It's on the floor. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
No.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
2 yeas.
2 yeas, 1 nay. Thank you. Anything else, Councilor Mercy, or you?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only reason I'm saying what I'm about to say is because we have the traffic engineer here, and I think this is very important, because a gentleman called my home, and he's very concerned, as he's a walker in the city. He lives in the downtown. He lives in the county square area. So let's say, for example, that I have a car and I'm going all the way down Merrimack Street like I'm heading to Belvedere. And at the lights there by Bridge Street, people are taking a left there, and I don't think that you're supposed to be able to take a left there. I think it clearly says that you're not supposed to take a left there. And I wanted to one day, but I went straight because I figured you couldn't take a left there. At the same time that people are illegally taking a left there, the walk sign takes place so that this gentleman has the walk sign to walk across the street while the traffic is illegally taking that turn. So I think there's a need to address that situation.
I understand, not to interrupt the, Mr. Mayor, but I understand that the city manager would like to weigh in before.
We've received a number of complaints just like that. As a matter of fact, I was driving there the other night and someone took a left right in front of me. It's a question of enforcement. There are signs up, but we're concentrating on that right now, and we'll
Okay,
take care
thank
of that
you.
issue.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
And the second part of your question, as far as them having the walk signal and people trying to turn, with the new traffic arrangements downtown, we added at every intersection in all directions are signs that say motorists must yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. Because there are locations where somebody may have the green light to go straight, and the pedestrian walk they've got a walk signal going across the side street. So if they turn right, they have to wait for that pedestrian. And that's something that it seems that Lowellians don't want to do.
That's right, because I don't know how to instill courtesy and public common sense to some
That's why
drivers.
we made sure that every intersection from every approach has at least one of those new signs So the reflectivity is fine. They can't say they didn't see it at night, but every one of them has a sign that says motorists must yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk.
Well,
And-
there again, we need enforcement in that area, because people are taking a left onto Bridge Street. Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me thank the members of the subcommittee and the members of the public that spoke this evening. I think we did get a lot out of the discussion, so thank you to the administration, and motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Yep.
We stand adjourned. Thank you.